Sports Talk Chicago. Here with Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's an NFL writer for the Associated Press and the host of Faith on the Field. Welcome, Rob Maaddi, to the program. Rob, it's great to have you on. How are you?
Hey, great to be with you, John, as always, man. Look forward to these conversations.
How have you reacted to this crazy NFL offseason, first off?
Well, I thought I can have a few days off in this offseason coming back from the Super Bowl, and it's been nonstop. It's been crazy. One of the wildest off seasons. Their spending spree has been astronomical for these teams going out there and really making major move after major move. We're seeing trades now, John, in the NFL that we haven't seen in years past. Teams didn't often trade star caliber players or franchise quarterbacks, and even as recently as swapping draft picks with the Eagles and the New Orleans Saints, a blockbuster swap of draft assets. It's been consistently one of the craziest, wildest off seasons, and it's fun. It really is, even though it makes life busier for an NFL guy like me, an NFL writer. I wouldn't have it any other way, man. I did get to enjoy a little bit of spring training, a few days, as close enough to the action here now that I'm in Tampa, the Tampa area. But it's all football all the time, and that's how the NFL loves it.
Which move surprised you the most of the ones you saw?
Oh, man. Davante Adams, I think, is the one that really struck me because I thought that once Aaron Rodgers really decided that, hey, I'm going to continue playing, and I thought he would. I didn't think he was going to retire. Two-time reigning NFL MVP. He's still such a talented player, and he's got so many more years that I think he can go out there and be an elite top of the line NFL quarterback. But once he decided to come back, and having heard him say, I don't want to be part of a rebuild, that NFC North and the NFC really is wide open. And I know the Rams are the defending champions, but they're going to go through finding out just how difficult it is to repeat in the NFL. I thought the Packers are going to be all in for this year. And then they go and trade Davante Adams, who I know there's some contract concerns with him because they certainly didn't think they were going to be able to afford giving him the money that he wanted. But, man, you bring back Aaron Rodgers, you give him a ton of money, and you trade away the number one receiver, maybe the number one receiver in all of the NFL. That surprised me quite a bit.
What kind of a connection do you think they have? Was it more Adams or Rodgers? How do you think they'll do now being separated?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. I think anytime a guy is as successful as Davante Adams was, he deserves a lot of credit for his route running ability, his playmaking skills, his hands, but also for sure, some of that's got to be Aaron Rodgers knowing exactly where to put the ball. Some of Aaron Rodgers' abilities as a quarterback helped him become the successful wide receiver that he is. I don't think he's going to go to Vegas and all of a sudden have a significant drop-off because I think he's that good. He's that talented. And I know that Derek Carr isn't a top 5 quarterback. I know he's not a top 10 quarterback. But, man, I think Derek Carr is a pretty good QB in the NFL. And maybe he hasn't had enough talent around him over the years to where you give him someone now like Davante Adams and some of these other guys. And maybe that elevates his game. So it would be hard for Davante to continue to put up the numbers that he had with Aaron Rodgers. But I don't see a precipitous drop-off for sure.
Who won the quarterback carousel? Which team?
Man, that one, I'd have to say Russell Wilson going to the Denver Broncos really positions them nicely, John. I think that Russell Wilson's a guy who has proven he's a franchise quarterback. He's a winner. Every year he's either been to the playoffs or had a double-digit win season, but this last one where he finally missed some games due to injury, and he came back too fast. He's acknowledged that. I spoke to him during the season. I spoke to him after the season. He wanted to come back as quickly as possible, and I think him doing that, he wasn't as healthy and able to go out there and make the throws, grip the football, everything else. But now he goes to a team that's got receivers They have weapons around him. They haven't been in the playoffs now since winning that Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. And I think what Russell does is he brings them the ability to be extremely competitive right away. I don't think Russ is going to go there and become the third straight quarterback to join a new team and win a Super Bowl in his first year, like Stafford did last year and Brady the year prior. But what I think he can do in Denver is take them there and get over the hump and get them into the playoffs, and maybe set them up nicely to where they can make a run at the Super Bowl in his second or third year with the Broncos. He also didn't go there and get a ridiculous new contract yet that could prevent them from signing other guys. Like Aaron got a ton of money, and that factored into Davante not being able to come back for sure. So I think Russ is going to have a major impact on the Denver Broncos, and he's in though the best division in the NFL, in that AFC West. They're loaded, they're stacked, top to bottom. So it's going to be really fun to see how that division plays out.
Rob Maaddi here on Sports Talk Chicago. Rob, let's talk some Bears now. What was your reaction to their hirings at head coach and GM?
I was a little surprised with Matt Eberflus, right? I thought the trend in the NFL was under age 50 offensive-minded head coaches, right? And he's a little bit above that. He's, 52 or 53, but he's a defensive coordinator. And you go from an offensive-minded guy in Matt Nagy, who they had some early success with, to now a defensive-minded head coach. And that doesn't mean they're not going to be successful on offense. And obviously they were grooming Justin Fields to be the quarterback, and he will step into that role this year. But I think there was a little bit of surprise for me there because it didn't fit the mold of what the NFL was doing, the trend of what the NFL. Doesn't mean he can't be successful there. And they don't have a first-round pick. We know that. They trade Khalil Mack. They get a second-round pick. And they've made some – they haven't made any major, huge splash signings, but they've supplemented the roster somewhat nicely. They're also in a division where the Packers – I know Davante's not there anymore, but as long as Aaron Rodgers is under center, it's the Packers division. They're the team to beat, but the Lions are still a rebuilding team that's a long way off. And I don't know what the Vikings are going to be this year. They also have a new head coach, and they certainly have the edge at quarterback with Kirk Cousins. But I think the Bears they're in that. We know they're in that rebuild. They're not quite at a retool. I think retooling teams are teams that are playoff teams or on the edge of, and they're just trying to get a little bit better. They're in a rebuild, and they got a new GM. They got a new head coach. They got a quarterback who they invested in, who they think can be a franchise guy. And this year for them is going to be all about finding out what they have in Justin Fields, because if they can, if Justin Fields can prove to be what they thought they were getting, and he is the future and he is that franchise quarterback, then I think this year, John, is a success for the Bears, even if they're 6-11, even if they're 7-10, or whatever losing record they end up with, as long as you know he is the guy.
What's your evaluation of Justin Fields personally?
It's a great question because I don't think I saw enough of him. I don't think any of us really saw enough of Justin to be able to say definitively one way or another that he is going to be the answer. I know he's got a ton of talent. He's got a ton of ability. I don't think Matt Nagy's offense last year did him any favors. He was certainly I saw, I guess it was a report. I don't know if it was from Justin or from someone close to him saying he wasn't exactly happy with the game plan for his first NFL start. Well, I don't think anybody could have been too happy with the game plan for his first NFL start. So it's going to be up to one. He's got to put in the work. He's got to put in the time, and there's no reason to believe that he won't put in that time, put in that work, and be the guy who's first. We always hear, right? First one in, last one out. Some guys can have that success, and they're not necessarily first one in, last one out. But surrounding him with the right talent and building a system, I think, that can cater to his skill set and maximize his abilities is going to be crucial to their success. And when you look at teams, and some coaches come in with a game plan and a scheme, and they say, this is how we're going to do it, you guys have to fit into my scheme. I think it's imperative when you have a guy as talented with the playmaking ability that Justin Fields has, you build a system and a scheme around his talents and around his ability. So I'm going to be very interested to see how that plays out in Chicago this first season.
How much did his turnover numbers concern you?
I think anytime guys turn the ball over, that's got to be something that you watch out for. That's something that can be a constant and it can be consistent. There are quarterbacks who are sloppy with the ball. They just don't hold. They're very susceptible to fumbles when they strip sacks or they hold the ball loosely when they go out there. Then there are guys who are always going to be daring, right? They're always going to put the ball in traffic or make throws that they think they can make, but aren't necessarily the best throw to attempt at that time. I think you can grow out of that. There are, with the right coaching, the right mindset, the people around him helping him and learn not just the intricacies of the quarterback position, but how to protect the ball, how to live to play another down. Hey, you know what? You don't have to get it all on this first down or second down, or even if it's third down, John, it's okay to punt. I hear this so often from defensive players. There are a lot of defensive players who tell me we want our quarterback to understand that a punt is okay because we didn't turn the ball over in plus field position now to the other team's offense. As a young quarterback, I think these are things that he can continue to learn with his new quarterbacks coach, with his new offensive coordinator, with the new coaching staff around him, and they can impress upon him these skills and the need to be able to protect the football. A lot of times, that is the most important. That's number one priority with a young quarterback. Make sure he understands, don't lose us this football game. We may win it later, but don't go out there and lose it in the first or second quarter trying to do too much.
Why do you think that happened to Fields? I mean, he had 7 touchdowns, 10 picks, 11 fumbles. Cole led the league in fumbles. Is that something on him? Is that the offensive line? Why do you think it happened?
Well, we know their offensive line, right? There were some issues there last year, and they've taken some steps to try and improve up front. But if a quarterback, if you're as young and as inexperienced as he is, and you're rushed and you're constantly under pressure and you don't feel comfortable in the pocket, and now you're leaving the pocket and you're going out and you're trying to create plays with your legs on the run, with your arm, all of that, right? All of that adds up. And one of the big points that coaches often make whenever they turn the ball over, or even when quarterbacks take a lot of sacks, they always say, hey, it's not always the quarterback not releasing the ball quickly enough. One, it could be on the offensive line. Two, it could also be on the receivers not running the right route, not being open. So everyone really, they share a little bit of that. They share a little bit of the blame when it comes to these things. I think there are certainly a lot of aspects of Justin's game where he's got to be able to step it up and improve. And he didn't have enough time on the field last year and enough experience out there to be able to judge him fairly or say one way or another that he's always going to be turnover prone. I'm not going to say that right now. I don't think that's fair to him. I want to see what he can do when he goes into, right, John, he didn't even go into the all of the offseason workouts last year as the number one quarterback. He didn't get all those reps with the first team. And as bad as the Bears were as a football team, not getting those reps with the first team and getting those reps with the second and the third just tells you he's got a long way to go to catch up to make sure he's NFL ready right now.
Did they do the right thing, the Bears, in wanting or intending to sit him all year, but then putting him in when they needed him?
I thought that they maybe waited too long on him. I know there was a lot of criticism as far as what they got. I know that they had made the commitment early on, right, to Andy Dalton. And I feel like there's two ways to look at it. Some young guys are able to go out there, suffer all the lumps and the bruises and take the hits and the interceptions and the losses, and they pile up. And some guys are able to handle that. They're able to learn from it. They're able to brush it off. I don't know Justin well enough to be able to say which category he fits in. Is he the guy who's going to let those losses that pile up, those sacks, those interceptions, those fumbles, and that negativity that surrounds all that, would he allow that to carry over? Would that then become part of his identity? Is I'm on a losing team, I'm a struggling quarterback, and how does that carry over? So I think they had to make that evaluation, and that one for me is important to determine. Like, you got to, for as talented as a player is, his psyche, his mental well-being is very important, because a lot of struggles early on can bring guys down in year 2 and year 3. So I would have liked to see him play more, because when you're on a losing team and you're not going anywhere, it's easy to say, hey, we got to seize as much as we can from this guy. But if they made that determination based on what they think he could handle early on, then I could give him a pass there.
What do you think of the Iain Cunningham addition too, former Philly guy?
Oh man, I think that's something that they gotta really look at and see how they can help with what they're doing on this team. And Iain is a, I don't even, when you go back to his time in Philadelphia, I don't really remember how much time he spent there and what he did with them as far as in that front office. But he's considered, right? He's considered a guy who is a rising star, John. He's considered, Philly has been known with Howie Roseman, as much criticism as he gets, to the joke in Philly is a GM factory. Andrew Berry, Joe Douglas, Catherine Raichie got an interview. And then you look at Iain, and what was his stamp in Philadelphia? We didn't necessarily know exactly what was he responsible for. Was there somebody that he was fighting for to bring in? Did he do this? But when you're coming from an organization that's had success, when you're coming from an organization that's had guys around you, the Howie Rosemans, the Joe Douglases, the Andrew Berrys, and other people that other teams are valuing, that other teams want to bring in, and even if they're not hiring them, but pick their brain, right? Now it means that you're coming from a winning culture. And even though Philly had a losing season 2 years ago, 4 out of the last 5, they've been to the playoffs and they had a Super Bowl to show for it. There's a winning environment that he's coming from. And I think that's going to be important for the Bears when, as they're rebuilding the way they are, to try and really turn this roster over, turn this team into one that can have success going forward.
How long do you think it takes for the Bears?
I don't think it's a 1-year rebuild. I think that the Bears are in a position where there's a ways to go. They're in a division that may allow for them to have success sooner rather than later outside of the Packers. I don't have a lot of faith or confidence in the Detroit Lions. I don't think anybody does. I don't have a lot of faith and confidence right now in the Minnesota Vikings' ability to be more than an 8-9 win team. So outside of the 2 games they'll play the Packers in division, they'll have a shot. But I think they're at least a 2-year window away from being a legitimate playoff team. And if they can make strides this year, if they can show that, hey, Justin is the answer at quarterback, and even if it's not necessarily translated into W's, but it's translated into some positive feelings, the turnover of the roster, the culture building, the chemistry getting to where they can have that kind of mentality going forward. We're building something here. We have something special in this building, and maybe next year and the year after that they could be competitive enough to field a playoff team.
Rob Maaddi, still here on Sports Talk Chicago. Rob, a few more questions before we finish up. First off, faith on the field. How's it been going?
Faith on the Field's doing very well, John. I appreciate the question about that. We are now in 8 markets on 8 radio stations across the country. Had some really cool guests this year from Russell Wilson, Brian Dawkins, Hall of Famer, some Jerome Bettis, Hall of Famer. It's been awesome. Tim Tebow probably hopped on 3 times this past year. So we're in 8 different markets on 8 different sports stations across the country. We're growing. We're building. The goal is to be in every state, and slowly but surely we'll get there, and we're hoping for big things. We're trying to do some live events more this year now that we're out of the pandemic. Something that we can do is bring a live event to, whether it's a church, a conference center, whatever it may be, just show people a little bit more of what Faith on the Field's all about.
How'd the show start up? Like, what got it started?
It was really, John, out of my desire to my passion is telling people what God has done in my life, and sharing where I was, where I am now, the peace that I have in my heart from knowing my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, building that relationship. I often talk about, I used to be a fan of Christ. I became a follower, and then I graduated into a disciple. And as a disciple of the Lord, I just want to share the good news and let everybody know, hey, I know that this is a tough world. I know that there's a lot of negativity surrounding us. I know there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of stuff outside of our control. But I find my peace and joy in the Lord. And that's how I don't measure myself on my follows, on my likes, on my clicks, on any of that stuff. On my identity is not in what I do for a living. My identity is in who created me and who gave his life for me. And I think as we go through, mental health has become really difficult topic for a lot of people. It's one that more and more we are opening up about. And I feel like it's something that I hope and pray that more people will find that peace that they can get through Christ. I know I would never tell someone not to go and pursue any kind of clinical help, any kind of doctors and any of that. I think that's very important, but I think there's also an answer that too often we don't let people know, that answer is Jesus Christ. And that's a way that they can go to find that peace and that joy, that real peace and that real joy that doesn't come with wealth and fame and glory and everything else. Because so many times those people that we look at and say, hey, they got it all, in the end, they have a void. They feel empty.
Rob, before we finish up today, last question. What's the most powerful testament or most powerful story you put on the program?
John, there's been so many different ones. I'll just point to one that's most recent because of what we just spoke about, and what has been transpiring a lot is Brian Dawkins, who is a Hall of Fame football player with the Eagles and the Denver Broncos. And early on in his career, through so many pressures and so much that was on his plate, he had anxiety, he had depression, he had suicidal thoughts, and he was able to overcome all of that. And he'll tell you that, yes, he did go out there, like I said earlier, made sure that he got some help clinically, but he also was able to turn it over to the Lord. He said for a period of time early in his career, when he was going through that, he just shut himself off from everything in the outside world, movies, radio, music, any kind of negative possible influences that weren't from God, that wasn't from the Lord. He would shut himself off from that. And that was how he was able to overcome these demons, overcome these issues. So we did an event together in March. We went up north to the Philly area and spoke to some students who have been going through some of these issues. And I thought it was a very powerful testimony that Brian shared, and is one that's much needed now, especially in this age that we live in.
Rob, thank you so much for joining me. Always appreciate your insights on football and Jesus Christ our Lord. Really appreciate the time as always.
John, thank you, and keep up what you're doing. Great work, and I wish you a ton of blessings in everything, in all your endeavors, my man.